welcome to the second edition of the Scottish Liberty Newscast. We are Antony Sammeroff and Tom Laird, two lowlifes living the high life, broadcasting to you on KA Radio, and we do have some news for you. It's always lowlifes involved in politics. So tell us a little bit about our first story today, Tom.
Yeah, okay. We're going to talk about that man again, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, for anybody out there who doesn't know who he is the Conservative Party of the UK's leading contender to be next Prime Minister. His closest stablemate, if you can call it that, in that running is a guy called Jeremy Hunt. Which should be Cockney rhyming slang. I think it will be from now on. And in addition to that, he was an ex-Foreign Secretary. He's ex-editor of The Spectator magazine. And he's been very much in the news because he's a contender, but because he's also quite controversial. He once described Muslim women as looking like bank robbers or letterboxes, and he got into some trouble for that. And to his credit, to this day, he's refused to apologise and say that's his honest opinion. He thinks that's what they look like, and he thinks the burqa is a bit ridiculous. So he hasn't apologised. Now his latest spot of hot water is he had a spat with his most recent girlfriend. I believe they're still an item. I haven't heard that they've split or anything. But neighbours overheard him and her having a domestic argument, shall we say, in their flat, and it was quite a posh neighbourhood of London, obviously. And neighbours called the police, and I believe Boris was cautioned or whatever, and because they'd heard shouting. Basically heard him shouting and her shouting, and the key phrase they heard her shouting was, "Get your hands off of me and get out of my flat." Any guy who's ever been in a relationship or relationships knows that some of them can be quite heated. People shout, people raise their voices. Sometimes in certain incidents, crockery's thrown. I know I like to. And it gets a bit out of hand. But the neighbours phoned the police, and now he's been asked to explain himself. And he hasn't. He said, "Well, I'm not going to explain this. It's a non-issue." I think it's a non-issue. Couples have domestic disputes, but this is a very sensitive issue in Britain these days. The police, politicians, our justice system are under intense pressure to come down hard against domestic violence. And when they say domestic violence, what they're talking about specifically is men beating up women. That's really what they're talking about, not the other way around. So domestic abuse can be, and here in Scotland, the Scottish Government are ready to change guidelines and police are already operating on guidelines that shouting equals domestic abuse equals domestic violence, therefore the police are called, and if there's what they call a credible witness that's been shouting, one or other of the couple can be arrested, and that's usually the guy. So I think this is a non-issue. However, people are putting them under pressure to speak up about it. But here's my point on the issue. He's had a string of girlfriends. He's a bit of a ladies' man. None of these relationships have been especially successful. I think he has to concentrate on what it is he wants to do. If he wants to be the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, I think he has to have a cold hard look at whether he wants that or whether he wants this relationship, or whether whether he wants to play at being a great boyfriend in a modern sense.
Whether he wants to be a playboy, or whether he
wants to be a playboy, or even if he just wants, what's more important to him? Is this relationship more important to him? In which case, stand down, or is his ambition to be Prime Minister more important? In which case, I say, cut her the hell loose, because she's trouble. Because she hasn't actually come out and said anything I don't know in his defence either. The neighbours, whoever they are, you assholes, I don't think they really needed to phone the police. I think they took great glee. I mean, they outed themselves to the Guardian, I believe. I think it's just a sad case of affairs where couples can't have a domestic squabble anymore without somebody phoning the police. And I know somebody recently in Scotland who was arrested when the police came to his house after a neighbour heard shouting. He'd injured himself. He had been drunk and had staggered. And it's not illegal to be drunk. It's not illegal, certainly not to be drunk in your own house. He staggered, fell, put his hand through the bedroom window and cut himself and let go a string of expletives, and he was shouting. Neighbour overhears it, phones the police. Police arrive. Despite the tearful and loud protestations of his girlfriend that he had done nothing wrong, the police decided that they had enough to arrest him on a domestic violence charge, which they duly did, which was a Friday evening, quite late. He was arrested, taken into Edinburgh. There was no room in the tanks at Edinburgh to keep him, so they stuck him in a van all the way through to, I believe it was Greenock, which is on the other side of the central belt of Scotland. And they kept him in there over the weekend until he could face the beat on Monday morning. And it was a complete nonsense charge. It was subsequently dropped. I mean, you had to pay a lot of money for a lawyer. And you can't even sue the police because the police are following the guidelines that they've been given by the Scottish Office and the Justice Minister. So the only thing you could possibly do is sue the Justice Minister and the Scottish Government, which good luck with. So it's a pretty precarious situation. So I think Boris Johnson was quite lucky he didn't find, I think if it hadn't have been Boris Johnson, if it had just been an ordinary Joe Public, they'd have probably got their collar felt and taken into custody. I think Boris Johnson has to decide what it is he wants. Does he want to be a serious player in the political world and be the Prime Minister of the UK? Or does he want to dally with this girl? I think she's in PR, ironically. And yeah, she's much younger than him, which is fine. And I realise that nothing, F's you like a crazy bitch. But if she be cray, I think it's time that he just ditched her and moved on. I mean, once he's Prime Minister of the UK, I don't think he'll be beaten. He's probably beaten them off with a shitty stick as it is, just because he's high profile. I think once he's Prime Minister of the UK, I think he could pretty much get whatever girlfriend he wanted, and one that's probably not going to say, get your hands off me and get out of my flat. Antony, over to you. And I promise not to interrupt you.
Maybe not conspicuously. I'm just waiting for the interruption. Could he get just anyone he wants? Because people won't like. Well, look, the thing is that it sounds like a non-issue because there's lots of issues that are legitimate to criticise Boris Johnson for. I don't know his girlfriend. I don't know what she's like. If she is trouble, yeah, he could probably do better. He has been accused of being a lazy charlatan and a liar. And
is this by her?
That's quite funny. That he, an incompetent, even dangerously incompetent foreign secretary. I haven't followed his career as Foreign Secretary, but I know that he's been accused of that from both sides. What we know is whether you care or not. Well, one thing is he's an adulterer. You might not care about that. You might. Another thing is he's a procurer of abortions of convenience. And for a conservative, these are sort of moral issues that right-leaning people care about or are supposed to care about. So there's plenty to go on Boris's moral character, aside from snide remarks about Muslims looking like pillboxes. I don't think he's very libertarian. I'm not sure that he will secure a decent exit from Brexit. That's a decent rhyme. We should put it in a rap. He has vowed to very recently, to fire any cabinet ministers opposed to no deal Brexit. So I think the correct strategy for any runner for the Conservative Party is say, I'm going to get us out. It's going to be a short, sharp shock. We're going to get out by hook or by crook, and that will be that. MP's bid to block no deal, as Johnson says, Cabinet must want fast Brexit, is another story up on BBC's UK Politics. So there's a real fight going on, and he said something like Brexit is do or die, and he's been asked to clarify what he meant by that, as though it's not obvious, after some kind of backlash. Also, his team have it, they like to pull this stuff out to smear people. They say, Johnson's Brexit plan team admit they have no idea what it will cost, as though that's unique to Boris. No one's Brexit plan team has any idea what it wants.
None.
The thing is that Brexit has overshadowed every single other political issue in this country for more than 3 years. The referendum was 3 years ago. The run-up to it was, a year or two long. It's like a circus that they can distract everyone from every other legitimate issue. What's your take?
Well, first of all, just briefly back to what I was talking about. If the guy can't get his own house in order, right? How can you expect him to get a political party and all the squabbles and infighting that go on there in order? And how can you expect him to perform well as a negotiator if he can't even negotiate with his girlfriend properly? I mean,
he should just get Trump in to negotiate the Brexit deal. That'll do.
It would have been done already.
No question.
I have every confidence in that. There is no reason why this couldn't have been done.
Well, Theresa May.
Yeah. Well, she's
not competent. She's not competent to manage a corner shop, as far as I'm concerned.
That remains to be seen. But yeah, she doesn't strike me as the most competent individual. There's many problems with Theresa May as well. She certainly wasn't libertarian. I don't even think she was a conservative, never mind libertarian. And she, the mandate was simple. The mandate was to get out of the EU. And it could have been done within 6 months. I've often commented, the Czech Republic and Slovakia divorced in 6 months.
Yes.
It was over. It was a done deal, dusted. Where there's a will, there's a way. And there was no political will with Theresa May.
Trying too hard to play both sides. Just to clarify,
trying to please everybody, end up pleasing no one.
When I said she's not competent to manage a corner shop, and you said that remains to be seen, are you meaning to allege that now that she's out of politics, she's going to end up the manager of a corner shop?
Well, if anybody will take her on, yeah. Britain might even be we might have an economy roughly equivalent to a corner shop if they don't get their act together. So it just baffles me why men of considerable standing and power go to complete rat shit when it comes to women. You know, they don't seem to. I just don't get it. You know, you've got everything. You've got money. You've got power. Quite a charming guy. Okay, you're not the best looking a guy, but you know, clearly the majority of women don't seem to give a flying monkeys about that. Why would you even bother with a woman who can't be reasoned with? Although I don't know that. You know, I'm making that assumption.
Yeah,
you know?
there are women that can be reasoned with.
Controversial. I'm sure there are thousands of KA listeners who are all female who are perfectly reasonable. That's why they're listening to KA radio.
Well, you know
in the first place.
You know what they say to dealing with a woman in a conflict: change her mood, not her mind. That is the received wisdom.
Well, so maybe he was trying to change her mood by giving her a hug, and that's when she yelled, "Get your hands off me and get out of my flat."
Yeah, and it's about different temperaments. You know, sometimes people, when they're annoyed at you, want a big hug to patch up, and some people are like, "No, don't touch me until I'm not angry anymore." So
yeah.
You need to.
Well, I'm usually just no, don't touch me.
No, you're just in general. Yeah. Unless it's in a specific place, of course.
Exactly.
So Boris, know your women, read some self-help, but read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or something like that.
Yeah, if you can't control that, you can't control your water, quite frankly.
I just don't think he's very competent, just in general. He's more like bumbling, like, oh, I'm sure you'd have a funny...
So you don't buy that... You don't buy that the...
Funny chat with him down the pub. Sorry, I think we're lagging.
Yeah.
I think you'd have a funny chat with him down at the pub over a beer, and he might be a good neighbour. But I'm not really sure I'd like him running the country.
Clearly not. His neighbours grassed them into the police. Which they obviously couldn't wait to do.
The irony escaped me until you mentioned. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying.
I was going to say, you don't buy then this idea that the bumbling buffoon act is just that, an act. You actually think he is a bumbling buffoon, and the serious politician act is the act.
It's not an act. You can't act that. He might not be a complete buffoon. He's obviously got some brains between the ears, but I think he may have a buffoonish quality, and I don't know. Politics does not court competence in the way that the private sector does, because there's a sort of meritocracy to climbing up the ladder. Okay, everyone's had a shite boss. Someone shite can rise to the position of boss, but if you want to continue climbing the ladder, you have to have good social skills and you have to be good at your job, because they're not going to be paying you 200 grand or whatever it is to do a rubbish job, unless, you know, you're someone's brother or you're their uncle. And,
yeah, or the head of a bank that can get taxpayers' money.
Well, again, that's public-private partnership, and that's going to happen all over the place as soon as government money gets involved. So that's why I think most of these people are likely to be incompetent, because they're not subjected to a meritocratic process. They're subjected to a democratic process that doesn't actually involve anything to do with being good at your job, but just convincing other people that you're a right character. You know, people go for the candidate that speaks to them emotionally on their gut level. Oh, how that person makes me feel. And I think that's just an unfortunate fact.
Okay. So if we're done with Boris...
I wish we were done with Boris.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any viable alternative. I really can't. I
Tell me
really
about,
do.
tell us about Hunt. What's so odious about him?
Well, he's a fudger. He's not. He wants to do a deal over Brexit. In fact, he's not a Brexiteer at all. He's not even very conservative. Never mind very libertarian. That's my
Tell
problem.
me,
So what we'll do is we'll for the next show, because we've talked quite a bit at length on Boris Johnson. What we'll do for the next show is I'll prepare a hit list for Jeremy Hunt and tell the people out there
okay,
exactly what my beef is with Jeremy Hunt.
that would be good. I'll get an education too.
Okay, so from one set of unfortunate events to another, to someone a little bit more down the ladder from Boris Johnson. Just recently, last couple of weeks, there was a chap who lost his job. Stevie, can you hear me? Because I would like you to maybe not put the story up because we can't this week, but if you could tell me the guy's name because it momentarily escaped me.
I shall find that out for you.
Good man. This is why we have Stevie here, because in fact there'd be no show without Stevie, no show without Punch. So we have a chap who's been sacked from Asda, which is quite a large supermarket chain here in the UK. For those of you in the United States or anywhere else, you may have heard of Walmart.
It is owned by Walmart.
Yeah, and Walmart, basically Asda is Walmart. They're part of the Walmart group. And they have recently sacked an employee because he committed the heinous crime of posting on his own Facebook page. His own Facebook. Not this company's Facebook or anything like that. But some of his colleagues had access. They were copied in on this. The guy's name's Brian Leach. Okay, Brian Leach. And I believe he's disabled. And he works, I think it's on checkouts at Asda Walmart. And he posted, as you do on Facebook, people shit post, he posted a Billy Connolly video. Billy Connolly, famous Scottish comedian, one of the original comedians who done stories and done observational comedy as opposed to doing gags. And he decided to post a video, and this particular video was Billy Connolly attacking religion. Now, not just one specific religion, all religion. Billy Connolly's got a beef against religion, doesn't like it, thinks it stinks, thinks it's a bad idea, thinks it's absurd. All very good. That may be offensive to some people who take the religion seriously, but that's Billy Connolly's opinion. And he made a lot of people laugh doing it, and nobody seemed to have a problem with it when the video was made. However, this guy posted a 2 or 3 minute segment on his Facebook page, and part of that segment was Billy Connolly having a go at radical Islam in as much as he had a go at suicide bombers, saying suicide bombers can F off, they're assholes, etc. And one of
I think he said they're idiots.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Billy Connolly was slightly less sweary than me then. He said that suicide bombers were idiots. So I'm not sure what the point of the people who complained against this were, his colleagues who complained that it was offensive. Are they complaining that it was offensive to suicide bombers? Are they complaining that it's offensive to Islamic? Are those people suggesting that all Muslims are suicide bombers or are sympathetic to suicide bombers? I don't know. But the complaint was that it was offensive, as the Walmart had a conflab and dismissed them. Even though the guy went on to apologise, which he shouldn't have done. And I know you're going to do your bit on that, Antony.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind reading the apology.
Yeah, he made, I
I'm
would
just going
say,
to
rather a grovelling, I would call it a grovelling apology. And it, as you know, it done no good, probably made things worse, because he's tantamount to then admitting that he's done something wrong, which I don't
Yes.
think he did.
And they
And
always double down.
he's lost his job. Are the people who complain proud of the fact that they've put somebody onto the dole? You know, I don't know whether he's got a family, whether he's got kids or whatever, even if he just has to take care of himself or pay a mortgage. For what? Because he didn't say anything, he posted a video that he thought was funny. Some other people didn't. And now this is becoming far too frequent these days, where companies don't even stand up and say, look, we don't have a reason to sack this guy. He posted it on his own Facebook page. He turns up to his work on time. He does his job. He hasn't been a problem in the workplace. He treats his colleagues courteously. We're not going to sack him. I think the first company who did that would get plaudits. I think a lot of people would stand up and say, do you know what? Good on Asda Walmart for doing that. Thankfully, some companies got some spine to stand up to the Twitter mobs and the torchlight, and pitchfork brigade and stand up for somebody's livelihood. I think this is getting out of hand. It's bad enough the government doing this. Private companies are doing it under pressure now from the Twitter mob. Anthony, what say you?
It's driven by a minority, and everyone's kowtowing to the least, Well, do you know what? Why don't I just establish a small minority that says you can't, I don't know, walk down the street wearing a blue T-shirt? I wish I could think of a more absurd example. That's offensive.
How about goths or extreme metal fans who wear a T-shirt saying Jesus is a Jeremy Hunt?
Yeah, well, that T-shirt hasn't been circulating for a while. I think it'd be a lot worse
people
now
used
than
to
it
wear
was
them,
then.
and some people found them offensive.
Yeah, they are offensive, but so what?
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, so you don't have to look at it.
So the
if he
thing
walks
is,
into your church wearing one, then you could throw him out or whatever.
Throw him out, or any cafe, restaurant. You have any private place completely has the right to eject someone for wearing a Jesus is a Jeremy Hunt T-shirt. And I support I wouldn't wear it. I never would wear something like that. And I kind of think anyone who'd wear that is a bit of a dick. It's not necessary to do it. I don't think it's necessary to do it. But
of all the people in the world in the history of the planet that you could choose to say offensive things about, it's sheer sensationalism and sheer.
But I mean, the band.
Look at me.
Even the band who issued that T-shirt more or less said they did it for a laugh because they thought it was pretty funny. It's not because, you know what I mean? Because it was so offensive. Sorry, I'm laughing. But,
personally, I found Danny Filth's singing, if you could call it that, and his vocals more offensive than that. Yeah. But this brings up a point, though. If a private company has a right to eject somebody for wearing that T-shirt, do they have... I suppose they have the right to sack this employee for whatever reason they like.
Yes, they've got a right to, but we don't have to like it.
Yeah, they're still dicks.
Also, it depends on their contract as well, because they might not have just cause, and if they don't have just cause under the contract, then maybe you can get it overturned or sue them. I mean, I've heard a story of someone stealing from a business, and they sacked him for stealing. And
it didn't say in his contract, don't steal.
No, it's not that. They didn't follow the correct legal dismissal. They didn't follow the correct legal dismissal procedure.
Right. They didn't follow protocol.
Yeah. They went to court. He wanted his job back. He was stealing. But he didn't get his job back, but they had to pay him a lot of compensation. That is ridiculous, but the law's an ass. So I just want to read.
Sure, just quickly, because Stevie's just flashed up, and that's never even occurred to me. Asda, Walmart sell Billy Connolly videos.
Oh my God.
They make money selling Billy Connolly videos. So should they stop selling Billy Connolly's videos and donate every single penny that they ever made from a Billy Connolly video? Should they donate that to a Muslim charity?
Well, I mean,
I say no, but you know, if they're going to be true to their supposed principles, maybe they should.
it's nuts. So I just want to read this apology. I have spoken to affected colleagues apologizing for my post, taking their feedback on board. I have realized people's faiths are very important to them and the nature of the post regarding the sensitive nature of it relating to the holy place of Islam. If I had faith, I can imagine being very upset myself. I will think very carefully before posting online or saying anything that could be interpreted as hurtful to others in my place of work. I bet he bloody will think very carefully about it, but because he doesn't, not because he doesn't want it to do it, but just because he's scared of the consequences of sharing something that he finds funny. Now, my problem with apologies like this is not just that they double down if you apologize, which they do.
Yeah.
They go for the throat if they smell fear. It's you are throwing everyone behind you under the bus when you make an apology like that. Yeah. Every time you say, look, it was just a joke, it's ridiculous that I've been sacked, and start a Patreon or whatever, I can't remember what the GoFundMe, whatever it is, right? You are showing people that this is not on. And when you grovel, not only are you throwing, you're feeding the wolves. You're feeding the wrong wolf, right?
Yeah, it's a feeding frenzy. Yeah,
it is. You should be feeding the wolf of liberty or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Not
does liberty have a wolf? I thought it would be more of a bear.
It's a porcupine, actually. So
only in certain states. Only in New Hampshire.
Right. Well, I love the libertarian porcupine. I think it's a perfect thing.
It hates you.
Well, I don't really care what the porcupine thinks. I'll kick the fucker. Right. If it spears me. The reason why I like it is
Antony Sammeroff would like to kick to death.
I didn't say I'd kick it to death. I just said I just kick it. If
you'd have to kick it in the face, though. You would have to kick it in the face. It's the only place it's not.
But I'd only kick it if it spiked me, tit for tat. It's self-defense, right?
Okay. I think if it spiked you, you'd have great difficulty kicking it because your legs would be full of quills.
Right. Well, I think it's a pretty good symbol for libertarianism. Okay. It's like a nice, soft, squishy animal, but that's willing to defend itself if necessary. So, and it's got the means to defend itself. So, yeah, I really don't like this. I feel for him, but I hate that he apologized because he's kicking down. He's not.
But the guy's desperately trying to keep his job.
I don't care. He's not. There's other people coming behind him, and lots of people will jump to his defense. Lots of people jump to Dankula's defense. Lots of people jump to James Moore's defense.
Okay.
You know, he needs to speak for the people who will stand up for him, not for the people who will throw him under the bus.
But this is not some guy who's a self-appointed spokesman. He's not got a blog. He's not spouting his opinion regularly like us.
And he never will. He never will.
He's just a guy at work. He just posted a video. He didn't want to get into a shitstorm.
Okay, well,
so he's trying. So I don't want to be too harsh on the guy for making an apology.
You're more charitable.
Yeah.
You're more charitable on him than I am. Maybe.
He's only a checkout worker as far as I'm concerned. You know, if he'd been somebody who didn't have as much to lose, if he's somebody who had some independent wealth,
but he didn't keep his job. But he didn't keep his job, so he did neither.
But he probably thought he would and desperately tried to. So I mean, I I can't be too
Okay.
harsh on the guy for that. But it is a mistake, and
Fair enough.
yeah.
The only thing I really have to add is my genius. No, that's
Yeah.
not what I was going to say.
Yeah, so as the Walmart, go fund you.
Go fund you. I think that
And I won't be shopping
I
at
just want
the
to say,
Walmart anytime soon.
I just want to say, like, I fear that this thing is going to become more and more regular, and
It is. It's already happening.
if it does,
Incidents.
if it does,
Yeah.
that might eventually be to the good, because there's a point going to come where people say this is ridiculous, since most people don't agree with this BS. However, one thing I can say is I'm very, very happy that I'm self-employed at this point.
Yeah, it's probably a good space to be. I mean, apparently seven of the guy's colleagues complained about him. I don't know how many. I don't know how many were on his Facebook feed. And I don't. When they say colleagues, I don't know if those were immediate colleagues or whether those were colleagues, dotted throughout as the Walmart's empire, who decided to take issue with this. Maybe some of these colleagues were colleagues who had a grudge against him. I don't know the guy. Maybe he was a complete pain in the ass in the workplace as well. I've got no idea. But
the guy's freaking disabled.
Sorry? I know he's disabled. Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. Apparently that's not enough to save you from summarily dismissal for posting a video. So we'll see. I mean, I don't intend to shop at as the Walmart anytime soon. I have done in the past. They're usually very reasonably priced. But yeah, I mean, although the thing is I'm running out of things to boycott. I boycott bars. I boycott Tunnocks. I boycott Gillette razors. I'm not very happy with McDonald's at the moment. But you start running out of things, and it becomes increasingly difficult to buy stuff or find employment. It's becoming an increasingly oppressive society, both in terms of government and in terms of this, as you've pointed out, very vocal, very agitating, very loud minority. And it is a minority who seem to wield this unfeasible amount of power over others, and it makes no sense. It really doesn't. And this is the thing: nobody gives a monkeys. When you speak to people about this, and you say, "Do you know this is happening?" People go, "Nah, probably deserved it, whatever." Unless it actually affects them personally, people don't care about this. Well, if he'd been dismissed, look, let's suppose he'd have posted pictures of the gay pride parade. I guarantee you there are many of his colleagues who may be Christian, who may be Muslim, and would have found certain pictures from a gay pride, could have been scantily dressed, sexually suggestive costumes on young men. Some people may have found that offensive. Some people may find the entire gay pride parade offensive. Would he have been sacked for that, do you think? I doubt it. I think if the comments were confined to just insulting Christians, for example, or offending Christians, I don't think he'd have been sacked.
Yeah, perhaps not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was that, Christians seem to be a group that you're generally allowed to be offensive about, but I think that's because they're seen as part of the dominant culture. It's interesting because I think leftism is actually the dominant culture, but they act like the radicals. Like, it's I know you've got your skepticism of the left of when I grew up, but from what I can see, the left now is of different generation from 11 years ago in many very important ways, and it's quite shocking. 11 to 17 years, 11 to 19 years ago.
I think that's a generational thing. I don't think it's specific to the left.
Right.
I think it's yeah.
Well,
Carry on.
I don't know. The left were first of all, they weren't obsessed with identity politics. There was a little bit of it in there. It seems to have overtaken as the main concern. But when I was at uni, the radicals on the left, I can't speak for the everyday, sort of left-leaning student, but definitely the radicals on the left, their main priorities were the war on terror, and they were seriously concerned with civil liberties at the time. They don't seem to be particularly concerned with civil liberties now, and the war on terror doesn't seem high up on their shopping list either, which I think is a great shame.
Okay. Can I mean, I don't we don't want to drift into this too much, but can I ask you where the old left's concern for civil liberties were when members of Solidarity were being arrested in Poland that were opposing the Soviet regime? Where was their concern for civil liberties in Czechoslovakia? Where was their concern for civil liberties in the Soviet Union and in China?
I'm just talking about just talking about this country, and I do think, probably the rank and file weren't that, but there were. I definitely think on the very radical side there will have been major criticisms of sort of civil liberties in, say, China, for instance. I know a lot of people were in complete denial of what was going on in the Soviet Union, and then there was some people like, say, Noam Chomsky, who I've got a lot of problems with, and more as he gets older, actually, who would say, well, the Soviet regime doesn't actually represent what left-wing people should be looking for. It's an authoritarian regime, this, that, and the other. But, he was marginalized for having those views during that period. He still is, given how famous he is and how many books he sold and things like that. You'd think he'd be consulted on mainstream television again and again, but for all his flaws, he goes against the status quo, and those voices that were more even-handed will have been the marginalized voices because they would have been perceived as radical. So, shall we go on to our next story?
Yeah, let's finish on well, I thought it could be a cheerful note, but knowing my propensity, it might not. So you've got something for us, Antony?
Yeah, okay, so there's quite a funny thing. It depends on your sense of humor. If you're this is a social justice warrior special, right? Yeah. The Dalai Lama did say that Donald Trump lacks moral principle, and he did previously has suggested Europe should be kept for Europeans. I think he was just basically saying, people always paint this in the wrong context. He was just basically saying, Europe's got its own culture, and if they take in too many immigrants, then that culture is going to change, and they should have a right to their own culture. That shouldn't sound too radical, but of course, if you say anything about immigration at all, you're a fascist. So most recently, he said, should a woman succeed him, he said she'd have to be more attractive. So it's interesting because unlike...
More attractive than who? Him,
or should... it's hard to tell from the context. I'll read you the whole quote. Okay? It's interesting because unlike the spineless disabled guy, just kidding.
he may actually be spineless.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What's pejorative about that? The Dalai Lama refused to apologize. He doubled down. The Dalai Lama doubled down on previous controversial comments on a future female successor having to be more attractive in a BBC interview published Thursday. So he's accused of sexism following the interview with the BBC in 2015 after stating that the future successor or the next reincarnation of the Dalai Lama can be a woman but must be very attractive or she would be of not much use. The 83-year-old Buddhist monk and his Nobel Peace Prize winner and the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, he was hospitalized earlier this year for a chest infection. The reporter Rajini Vaidyanathan followed up on the remarks, asking whether he understood how those comments could have angered women. The Dalai Lama responded saying that he made those comments one time before repeating his sentiments. If a female Dalai Lama comes, then she should be more attractive, he said, confirming his earlier statement. He added that if she were not very attractive, people, I think, prefer not to see her. That face. The reporter went on to say, a lot of women would say that's objectifying women. It's about who you are on the inside. And the Dalai Lama replied, yes, I think both. In the same interview, he railed against President Trump, noting his presidency has been marked by a lack of moral principle. So that is that story, the most part of that story. And
okay. Well, before I go on and maybe put my tuppence worth up, apparently we've got a question from a listener.
Oh, we do?
We do, yeah. Stevie, what is the question? Who is the listener and what is the question? We'll be delighted to answer it if we can.
Hi, Tom. Yeah, question is from Gareth. He's asking, it's basically the MSPs he's saying are away on recess today, and they're not going to be back until September. He's basically asking, do you guys think this is too long?
No, it's not long enough.
I think they should probably take a recess from about the 28th, 29th of June this year to the 27th, 28th of June next year, unpaid. I think that would probably be pretty good. And then maybe the same the year after that.
I would say for about the next 10 years at least.
At least.
Yeah, I think the longer the recess they can take, the better. Of course, I mean, if I was the MSPs, I'd take a short one, because while they're away, people might actually realise that they're not needed. You know? Remember when Britain didn't really have a government for a while with a hung parliament, and Belgium had no government for close to a year, and you know the guy who drove the bus still drove the bus and went to his work, and you know the world didn't fall apart. So my advice to the MSPs for their own benefit is take a shorter recess, because people might actually twig to the fact that you're not bloody needed. Okay. So the longer a recess that they can take, as far as I'm concerned, the better. Go away, have a nice long holiday, and don't come back, is my advice to the MSPs. So
well said.
Yeah.
So the Dalai Lama, I'm genuinely skeptical of organized religion, and I assumed that, you know, he was part of sort of friendly feudalism of the past. But having watched him on a few panel shows and things like that, I've warmed to him. Like, one of the things I noticed is he's quite modest. Like, he's very willing to say, I don't know, when he's asked a question.
He's very smug in his modesty, though.
I've never noticed any smugness from him personally. One thing that he's said is, if science contradicts the Buddhist scriptures, then people should go with science, not what the Buddha said, because Buddhism is meant to be a scientific religion. In Buddhism, if something is not logical, it ought not to exist. And that, yeah, I've seen him in panels. He's been asked a question, and he said, you know, he said what his opinion was, and said, but, you know, I don't know. And then said, another time he said, we need more research from experts to settle that question, or something like that. So I liked I like that modesty. I didn't detect smugness from him. You know, he's 83. He was born in a different generation, different culture, and I think he is quite benevolent and has probably worked quite hard on himself, and you know, he's a compassionate person. You've got some criticisms of him, so let's hear what those are.
Well, first of all, Tibetan Buddhism is not Buddhism per se, is it? It's a particular form of Buddhism. There's a lot of stuff mixed in there that you wouldn't call. I mean, it's
but that is true of many forms of Buddhism.
Sure.
Because Buddhism.
That wasn't a criticism, by the way. That was just an observation.
Fine. Buddhism adapts to the culture that it's in, because it's not got lots of doctrines. You know, Zen Buddhism obviously is Buddhism adapted to the culture in Japan. And in ancient times, you know, someone that was a seeker might go over through Japan or through China and go to a Taoist teacher, and then that teacher would say, well, you've learned all you can from me, so go to this Buddhist teacher, and that teacher would say, well, I've taught you what I've got to teach you, you go and see that Confucian teacher or whatever. You know, it was more of a kind of, it wasn't, Buddhism in particular, whether you agree with it or not, is meant to be scientific, and your first-hand experience is the authority on whether something's true or not. So you're not meant to believe in reincarnation just because the Buddha says it. You're meant to meditate or do whatever spiritual practices for long enough, and if you realize that in yourself, then you know you've got knowledge. But obviously, he did say what he believed. You know, what he believed, what he had realized through his own self-knowledge. And people do take the doctrinaire version of it. Obviously, most people who identify with Buddhism as Buddhists just read that and go, yeah, I agree with that, I like that, I'll believe that. It's not that they have.
Okay. I mean, because we don't have much time left, I mean, I'll reserve. I have some serious criticisms of the Dalai Lama and the lamas in general. They were quite oppressive. It was quite a grim feudal society that they had in Tibet before the communists took over. I mean, anything that if you have a situation that communism improves, it couldn't have been really very good in the first place. Right. So so I have some issues, but what I'd rather just quickly talk about in the next 2 minutes is how do we get to the stage where, okay, I get that, is it true that when the Dalai Lama dies, at that very moment that he dies, they will go looking for a baby that is born in that particular moment, and they'll decide which one of those babies is the actual reincarnation?
Yeah, there's a tradition like that. I think it's like 40, I can't remember how long it is in Buddhism before you get reincarnated. It might be like 42 days or something like that. It's meant to be.
Right, so I don't know how they determine this, but that's what they've determined.
That's what they believe.
Yeah, sure, fine. So, and for X amount of years, you know, unknown, it's always been a bloke, yeah?
Right.
So now we've got to believe that somehow or other, after years and years and hundreds of years, maybe even thousands, that suddenly the great Lord, but whoever, I don't know much about Tibetan Buddhism, so I don't know who's in charge of the whole thing spiritually in the other realm, or whether it's just the universe. But suddenly the universe
man, it's karma.
Okay, so karma gets woke, right, and up to date.
Karma's now feminists. Did you not know? Did you not know that women are now to be admitted to the patriarchy in the interests of equal opportunities?
Right. Okay. So that's what it's about, is it? So I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've got religious beliefs, I suppose, and people will find them absurd. I find it slightly absurd that they'd go from, you know, it's all men to suddenly we're going to have a woman because it's in keeping with the times. I don't see
it's modern times.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Who knows? Well, why not scare the whole world? Why not have a black Irishman as the next Dalai Lama?
Yeah, why do they all have to come from Tibet?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, religion's an interesting phenomenon.
It is. So
yeah, I can't disagree with you about the in inverted commas friendly feudalism of the Tibetan lamas. Although, as we could probably talk for hours, we often do in the pub.
We only have about 30 seconds.
But we have to draw to a close. So, all you people at home, thank you for tuning in to our new show.
Everyone, so.
And plenty more to talk about soon. would you like to sign off, Tam?
Yeah, I hope we've offended everyone, and I'll talk to you next time on K Radio. Keep tuned.
Time is precious, but what do I know? Been to places you